where I was working when the Gabby Petito story broke. And that was sort of like, I guess, the story where people kind of found me. I mean, I had sort of a small loyal following, but that was sort of where people, I guess, discovered me.
Now, where are you originally from?
I'm from Florida. I'm from Fort Lauderdale.
So you're from down
I grew
there.
up there. Yep.
You grew up in Fort Lauderdale.
I did, yeah.
You're normal.
Yeah. Crazy place to grow up.
Good for you.
There's not a lot of people who grew up in Florida. Like, I was born in Florida. Most people are like, come there later,
Right.
I'm a real Floridian. Florida man.
Yeah, my friend Danny Jones always complains about all the goddamn Jersey and New York transplants down here. I'm like, listen, it's
It has
nice
gotten
weather.
a little crazy since COVID, though. Like, so many
Right?
New Yorkers came down.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the population change in Florida since COVID?
It's insane. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I was living in Miami up until I moved back to Fort Lauderdale like 2 years ago. One of the reasons I left Miami was just because it got so crowded. Like, my whole neighborhood, which I love New Yorkers, but it all became New Yorkers. Like, my favorite restaurants were impossible to get into. My gym became crazy. Like, it just got to be nuts. Everybody moved there. It slowed down a little bit now, though, I think.
Now, at the beginning of COVID, though, were you going on the road a lot, or even for guys like you because Gabby Petito wasn't until fall 2021. Like,
that's right.
In 2020 and then early 2021 when it was crazy, were you kind of locked down too?
No, I was on the road every single week during COVID, which was insane because everybody was staying home. Like, the flights were empty. You could get flights all the time, super cheap. So I'd fly to stories and be like, there'd be like 12 people on the plane. And the weirdest thing was like in the hotels, no one was staying in hotels. So I was always in hotels, and it would be like me and my photographer, like literally the only ones in like an entire huge Marriott. And there'd be like, they'd have one person working at the front desk, no one else in the whole place. It was like ghost town, basically.
Isn't it crazy that was only like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't think knock on wood, I was always on the road and I was okay,
Did you always want to do this? Be the newsman on the ground when you were growing up?
Pretty much always. Yeah.
What drew you to it?
Yeah. I was kind of a theater kid to start out with. I liked theater as a young kid, middle school. And then I don't know, I just started watching the local news in Miami. Like, local news in Miami is crazy. It's kind of like LA. Like, there's like, the police chases every day and the helicopters are up and, fires and shootings. And I just got hooked on it as a kid watching. I was weird. I would make my mom, I was also into magic, by the way.
You were into magic?
I was a child magician. I would do like birthday parties and stuff. And then I went into the news phase, and I would make my mom drive me. Like, you'd see the reporters on TV at like, 5 p.m. And then I knew they'd be doing their live shots again at 6 p.m. So I would make my mom, drive me out there so that I could meet them. And these people were like celebrities to me. Like, I was obsessed with the local news.
You weren't like going in the background and blowing them up?
No.
Like,
which is what we deal with now. No, none of that. More just like, oh my God, I love you. Like, can I get your autograph? You know?
They were the superheroes.
They
back
were.
then.
They were superheroes, especially to me, but to a lot of people back then. That's when like local news was king.
Yeah. Also, Miami, like they're ducking bullets out there sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. Crazy news stories that I grew up with.
What are we talking? The 90s here in 2000s?
Yeah, I was born in '85, so it would have been like mid '90s. Yeah.
Yeah. You want some good documentary content, you go to Miami.
Sure.
There's definitely a few stories down there.
Oh my God. It's a great news town. I worked in local news there before I started doing the national thing. And it's never a dull moment. You got like crazy local politics, all sorts of corruption. You got crime every day. You got people eating each other's faces off under bridges. Just crazy, alligators.
You can't leave that down there. People eating each other's faces off.
Yeah, there was that big story in Miami. That was like a big national one years ago. There was like a guy on what was he on? He was on, what was that drug that everyone was on? Like bath salts. Yeah. He was on bath salts and like ate somebody's face off. And then you got like gators all the time, like, attacking people and stuff. So yeah, there you go.
Miami face eating attack lasted 18 agonizing minutes.
Yeah.
The grisly assault on a homeless man whose face was eaten by a deranged assailant lasted for 18 minutes and was captured on surveillance cameras. Rudy Eugene, whose authorities suspect may have been high on a dangerous new street drug known as bath salts, there you go, had to be shot 4 times by a police officer to halt the cannibalistic attack. Oh my God.
Yeah, this stuff happens all the time in Miami.
That's
like
Miami.
Some of it makes national news, but like it was a crazy news market. Yeah. So it was fun.
Yeah, it's like the good, trial baptism by fire.
It was.
If you will. You're down in Miami. It's like, all right, I can handle anything now.
100%.
Yeah. So you have, like I said, covered pretty much all the major crime stories since 2021.
Yeah.
We'll also talk about all the other types of stories you're covering. It seems like just whenever it goes down, they're sending you somewhere. Yeah.
It started, like you said, with the Gabby Petito. And that was obviously a big story that people got really invested in. I went to Northport, Florida, which is where she left with Brian Laundrie, in the van to go on the cross-country trip. He showed back up with the van, and I was one of the first reporters over there, which I think is why, people started following me. And it was weird because, the police didn't really like us being there, and there was no sidewalk outside Brian Laundrie's house where we could set up. So they kicked everybody off the street. And there was no real way to keep an eye on his house to see if he was going to come back or if Gabby Petito was going to come back. So I rented the lawn from the neighbor, made this agreement with the neighbor to pay him and his wife so that I could camp out on their lawn.
Now, how do you go about? You just walk up to the front door and say, I got an offer for you?
So I had kind of become friendly with, I'm just a friendly guy. When I go to these scenes, that's just my nature,
right.
To just kind of I always make friends with the neighbors and I'm just talkative, and you also have a lot of time to kill at these scenes, you're waiting for things to happen. So I'm chatty, So I had already become friends with them. And they had 2 adorable pugs, and I love dogs. So I'd always go out and see their dogs and everything when I was just stationed on the sidewalk. But then when they kicked us all out, I'm like, what are we going to do? Because everybody was going live from the police station. And I'm like, I can't leave this house. Something's about to go down. So anyway, I just said to them, and I felt bad. At first, I was just going to see if they would do it for free. But, I was it was me and my photographer and a producer. We were going to kill their grass and stuff. And it was kind of annoying for them, I think. So I was like, hey, we'll pay you. I forget what we paid them. Maybe it was cash. Maybe I want to say maybe $300 a week. I ended up being there for 6 weeks.
Is that out of your own pocket or are you calling up News Nation?
No, I think I don't know how we expensed it. Somehow we found a way to expense it. But and they had and they were both hardworking people. They would leave early in the morning, and they had I remember they had this little duck statue by their front door, and we would just put the money under the duck.
Oh, this is old school, bro.
Yeah, it was old school. And then it was incredible because everybody else had to leave and we had our spot, and it was right next to Brian Laundrie. Gabby Petito's the boyfriend who killed her. It was right next to his parents' house. So we were right basically in there. We would go right to the line of their yard and we had a tent and we would just stay there.
Oh, you had a tent on the front lawn?
We had a tent, yeah.
You're like Dirty Mike and the boys.
Yeah, and because we had all our equipment and stuff, and it was rainy, swampy in Florida that time of year. And I think it made his parents crazy because it was there was nothing they could do.
Yes.
We were right there, and we saw everything when the FBI came and raided the place. Everything we were there. We were on our own we had our own spot that we were paying for, so they couldn't do anything.
What is the legality there? Because like you said, they didn't have a sidewalk, so it was a little strange. Because I remember it. You'd see this video and there'd be people out on the streets.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned other people were forced to leave, but you were able to stay because you had permission to be on someone else's lawn.
Correct.
So how? From a First Amendment and maybe Fourth Amendment perspective, I'm sorry if I'm getting too technical, but what is the legality of police saying you can't be on the street itself? So
listen, this is as a reporter, especially when I was in local news, you're battling this every day. You're always getting kicked out of places. Usually if you're on a public sidewalk, there's nothing anybody can do. Period. You can stay on the sidewalk as long as you want. But that was the problem, is there wasn't a sidewalk. It was this weird Florida neighborhood where it was just a road, and then there were these 2 little kind of little canal, not really canals, but little ditches for this the water, drainage ditches on each side of the road, and then the driveway. So there was nowhere to legally stay. And they can say you're blocking traffic. They can get you off the road basically, which is what they did. And there was nowhere to park. Which also, when we were paying the neighbors, they would let us. That was also a big thing. They'd let us park in their driveway.
But when you're in this tent, the cops weren't doing in a tent.
Oh, they were annoyed. We beat the system.
So they're going up to the neighbors do they have permission to be here? And they're like, yes.
Yes, and I mean, I had eyes on everything in that spot. I mean, they must have been so annoyed, and especially the laundries too. But the police, I mean, I saw so many things during that month and a half that I didn't report because I was seeing everything up close. Like the police had put these hidden cameras up in the trees behind Brian Laundrie's parents' house to keep an eye on the back because they thought when he did come back, they thought he was going to sneak out. Yeah. And I saw a lot of that stuff happen. I never reported it just because why would I go on TV and say that? I didn't want to ruin their investigation. But there was just the spot. Yeah, because then he would have known and, you know, but the spot that I was in, it was just I knew everything and I never left. I mean, I would just stay there all the time.
Now that's interesting though, because that also is like a fine line of doing your job and also like trying to protect the integrity of the most important thing here, which is that an investigation is able to happen and people are brought to justice, or, you know, at the time she was found.
Correct.
You know, because they didn't even know where she was for a while or weren't sure if she was dead. Did you know that 1 in 8 Americans are currently prescribed anti-anxiety medications? It is a quiet epidemic that is sweeping the West right now. And people who start on these medications have a very hard time quitting. Recovering from benzodiazepine addiction or alcohol addiction is essentially like recovering from brain damage. But what if I told you that a legal mushroom that has been weirdly embedded into our culture is helping people to finally get off these GABAergic substances? I'm talking about Amanita muscaria, the little red top mushroom with the white dots that's depicted in Alice in Wonderland and Mario. This is a legal mushroom to buy, possess, and sell in every state except Louisiana. And thousands of people are using it to get off benzodiazepines and alcohol. This mushroom isn't only for people looking to quit their anti-anxiety medications. People are tapping into its power as a natural nootropic for focus during studies and work, a non-addictive alcohol replacement at parties, a dream-enhancing tool for vivid nights, and even a gentle aid for pain recovery. Amanita can do a lot more than help you quit GABAergics, and it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. For years, there was a massive gap in the market where nobody in the United States was reliably importing this mushroom. That's where Minnesota Nice comes in, providing you with the highest quality raw Amanita and consumer-ready Amanita products at a price that you can afford. So use Minnesota Nice to help find your harmony today. And go to www.mnniceethno.com/Julian. That link is in my description below. And use code JD22 for 22% off your first order. That's www.mnniceethno.com/Julian. Link in description below. And use code JD22 for 22% off. Much love. But what's that like when you, like you said, it's a long time where you're basically boring and doing nothing, and then boom, something happens and you have it. And this is a story everyone's watching around the country, and you can go right now in front of your camera and report it and get a lot of eyeballs on you, a lot of eyeballs on your network, make yourself some personal brand cash, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you decide on certain things the public should not have this because it could impede the investigation. What is that decision like? Because I imagine you almost have to think about that if you have integrity like you on almost everything.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to make those decisions in the moment. That's where like this whole, like I still am really into Twitter X, but I was into it during Gabby Petito big. I went from I think when I started the Gabby Petito story, I had 30,000 followers. Yep. And I mean, I had within a month, I was growing hundreds of thousands per month, You
were #1 trending on Twitter for 3 weeks.
So there was this feeling of there was so much interest in wanting to get the information out fast, but also taking a second to think about the investigation, about, by that point I was starting to get to know Gabby's parents. And this wasn't just a video game or a reason for me to get popular. There was real going on,
yes.
So I think that's where kind of the old school, I had grown up I started in a really small market, worked my way up for 10, 15 years. I had ethics from doing the job in local news, learning from different people who I looked up to. So it wasn't just about clicks. But there was this just hunger for information, and at the same time, you wanted to feed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you just have to make the decisions, and it's not easy. Like even camping out in the yard. I mean, what journalist does that? I think sometimes I've crossed the line. There's other things I can think of, and that I don't think I crossed the line there. But I got obsessed with it. I started following. So since I was camping out there, I would see every time the parents would leave. And this was when Gabby was missing. So I started following them.
Like walking or car?
No, by car. And that's where like I was with Luis, who was my like long time really good friend in photog. And like I think we started I remember telling Luis like, what is the boundary here for us? Like I don't want to be paparazzi, like, and we would follow them around. And then I started live streaming sometimes when I was following them because I wasn't sure where they were going. And you have to, in the moment, like no one knew where Gabby was. Then Brian Laundrie went missing out of the house. I don't know if you remember that. Like he disappeared.
Yes. Brian, actually, if you don't mind, before we go into all this, just for people who don't remember the case or didn't see the Netflix documentary that came out, I believe the end of last year, can you just give the outline of what happened at the beginning and what the nature of it was for them?
Yeah. So Gabby Petito, this beautiful young woman, was with this guy named Brian Laundrie. And they built a van together. Van life is really big. It's still really big if you go to like Utah, Idaho. So they put together this van that they were going to live in and travel across the country. She was an upcoming social media influencer. So she was making videos, beautiful, YouTube videos and Instagram and drone. And yeah, there you go. There's the van. And so basically, they started on this trip across the country. And things go south. We would later learn he was abusive and didn't like that she was, sort of trying to build this business of, van life and social media. And he ended up killing her in the Grand Teton National Park. But it was just a massive story because she was missing for so long. And then he went missing. And I don't think maybe Brian Koberger was as big, but there's not a lot of stories that come along like that where I think like everybody was sort of fascinated and dialed into it.
Yeah, it kind of had every possible theme you'd look for in your Shakespearean tragedy. Yeah. And not to make it not what it was, which was real life, but that's also something we could talk about in a little bit with what the public reaction was to it and then how people assess that afterwards because the reality is, unfortunately, there are a lot of incidents in this country that happen every day where someone goes missing or someone's abused by, their husband or something and ends up dead and is never found. And a lot of cases don't get the coverage. This one got the coverage, and I get it. But I think the documentary also did a really good job, the one on Netflix, of like kind of post the whole situation wrestling with why do we have a fascination with certain ones versus other ones. That said, both they were young. I think they were like 24 and 20, something like that.
Young,
and they had moved away from New York. They're living in Florida with his family. His parents, like you said, are at the center of the story, and it's like, what do they know? They go on this romantic journey across the country. One comes back, the other doesn't. Then you had the whole footage from when the cops pulled them over, so it added more drama. It had
it all on that, And you had, as a storyteller, as a journalist, you had immediately all of their videos when they were missing, so you could tell their story, and people saw them and became like obsessed because sometimes you'll cover a missing case, and it's like the family will give you 3 still photos, and it's like you got to make people care. And I think that it was like we were handed this whole envelope, but they had great YouTube videos, so people became very, very invested.
Did you trying to think, like how long was the process again from you first getting on the ground to they find Brian Laundrie's body, not hers? They found his.
So maybe a month.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, at first we thought he was in the house, which is the reason I was camping out, because we didn't know, was an arrest going to go down at any time? Was she going to show up? My first thought when I got there was that maybe this was like some kind of social media hoax, like were they somehow doing this? That was honestly before I knew anything. I'm like, are they kind of doing this for attention? Like,
oh, wow.
And she's going to, that was just what I first thought before I knew anything. So we were just waiting there and assumed that he was in the house, and then realized something really shady was going on because they would never come out and his family would never talk, which was just kind of weird. Like your daughter-in-law is missing and you're held up in the house, like hiding out. And then he went missing.
Yeah.
And somehow, mysteriously disappeared from inside the house.
And you didn't see, you had no inkling of that.
No idea. And the police didn't either. And and one day they were just like, we now don't, that you talk about why it was such a big story. So all of it was big. And then all of a sudden they come out one day when everybody thinks he's been in the house and they say, and now we don't know where Brian Laundrie is. We've lost track of him. He's not in the house anymore. It was like, oh my God. And
his parents weren't cooperating at all, which was, that was so strange to watch. It is impossible to put yourself in the shoes of, someone who raised someone for 20 some years and then is maybe in denial about what he did and is trying to protect their kid. But at the same time, you have another missing human being here. It's like morally. Yeah. You should probably help out.
Totally.
I think that's fair to say. But they were so, I would, from the outside, I'd describe it as they were stonewalling it.
Well, and we would later find out, I've been working on this now for years, but, through depositions and stuff that they had hired a criminal lawyer in Idaho where, and there was a lot going on behind the scenes. But at that time, just back to what I was saying, like, I started following them because it was hard to not go all in, like just want to know, well, where are they going? What's happening? Are they going to visit Brian? Like where?
Did they catch you following them in the car?
I'm pretty sure they knew. And, I think the FBI there was always like a few of us following, like, so it wasn't just me. Like there were,
You're like waving to the FBI.
But again, there was just this moment. And when you went back to like kind of where do you draw the line in ethics? Like I remember thinking like, what is the line here? Like, should I be following? And, you get personally obsessed with something in a case. And I just remember saying to Luis, like, my photographer, like, where should we keep doing this? Like, and I remember like even my bosses didn't know we were doing it sometimes. We would just like do it,
Yeah, that was another question. It's like how much do they know about your, not even minute to minute, obviously, as you just pointed out, but like day to day, like what your strategy was? Are you on the phone with producers at News Nation? Like, here's what I'm thinking about doing today. And
News Nation had just started. So, we're a new news organization even still, but this was the very beginning. So we are startup. We're still a startup, but even then it was like, how a startup is. We're already kind of like working everything out. Yep. And at that point now News Nation does like, we're on TV 24 hours a day pretty much with news. But back then we were only doing 2-3 hours a night because we had just started. And they would run like Blue Bloods and all these old shows during the day. So it gave me a lot more time to kind of like do those sort of, I had followed them for hours and like I didn't have to be on TV until at night. So I would tell, they kind of knew, but I think something in me was kind of pushing the limit a little bit during that, I think. But I don't think you can be good at the job if you're constantly worried about like rules and stuff.
You had said a little bit ago that there were times earlier in your career where in hindsight you felt like you had crossed the line. What do you have examples of that and why you think it was across the line afterwards?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a few. I don't want to jump around too much. I guess we'll talk about Brian Koberger later, but
yeah, we will.
I've regretted some things, like I snuck into his parents' neighborhood, which was like a gated neighborhood, and I got a lot of heat for that. Like people who felt bad for his parents. It's just when you're in the zone of a story and it's so hot and it's so raw in that moment, and you're like, when we look back and talk about these things, it's like chill, but like when you're in something that's that big in that moment and you're that invested and you're not sleeping and you're putting your all into the story, like sometimes you just maybe push a little too hard.
Is the mentality when you're doing this, I don't even know if you know this when you're in it, but I guess answer this as best you can. Is the mentality when you're doing this leaning more towards reporting the news and reporting the story, or actually because you are doing that, also like kind of being an investigator and solving it and helping the investigation itself with the professionals?
I think it's mostly reporting the story.
Okay.
Because, I don't want to ever interfere with, like I said, I don't think I've ever done anything, hopefully, to really interfere with a police investigation. That's never been an issue for me because I don't ever want to do that. So mostly it's just reporting. But along the way, like when these things are unsolved, of course you're thinking like sometimes you find things. I mean, even like with Gabby Petito, it was just a regular person who had some video that they found on their dash cam. You know what I mean? Like you can find things along the way, but I try not to go into it like I want to be a reporter, number one, and just bring information to people.
Did you have, on the Petito case, going back to that, did you have, towards the beginning of you being camped out and, trying to uncover information, was law enforcement asking you questions about, hey, have you seen this or seen that, like to try to help with the investigation? A
little bit. They were really, they were under a lot of pressure, and a lot of people were calling them out at that time. I mean, they weren't, the public was not happy with law enforcement during all of that, obviously. And then when he snuck out of the house and they didn't know, people thought it was just like a dog and pony show. So they were very careful with what they would say. I remember when I was telling you about how I saw I saw them putting up the secret cameras in the backyard of Ryan Laundrie's house, and like he had a neighbor behind his house where they put the cameras up in the trees. So I remember I went over to that neighbor and I was like, hey, like I saw them doing that, and he took me in the back and was like, yeah, here are the cameras, and here's like they had like a whole little antenna system beaming the video back to their police station and everything. So I remember I told one of the police like sergeants, like one of the higher ups that I was dealing with as a member of the media, I told them at one point that I had seen that and that I knew where they were. And I actually interviewed the neighbor and got video of the cameras, because that's kind of my other thing. Like you don't have to use it. And I didn't use it. But like when it's all over one day, I still wanted to document what I was getting in real time. And I remember telling them that and kind of like trying to show them that they could trust me, because they probably thought I was this crazy guy like camping, But it was like, listen, just so you know, like I have this and I would never put this out. So just trying to build like trust in that way, And I've had other situations like that in other cases with cops where I'll come across something and it's like clearly they wouldn't want this out. So, and sometimes I'll let them know that I have it, just to kind of show like this could be an incredible. I mean, if I had put the story out in that moment with the secret cameras, like you said, talk about clicks, talk about views.
Insane.
But it's like, I'm not going to do something. I've gotten to know the families and I want justice and I want them to find their daughter. And then also like, I'm not going to do something where I can't sleep well at night. And, I would feel bad about that.
Yeah.
It's not worth like one viral post or one big story on News Nation,
I agree. You have to toe that line, like we were saying a little earlier. It's a tough line to toe sometimes, because like you have a job to do.
Yeah.
But I think people don't want to see that, like, let's say people in the media are like in cahoots with law enforcement all times.
Yeah.
But I think there's a really, especially when it's, someone's missing or there's a life at stake, there's an appropriate middle ground there to where you at least say, hey, I got my job, you got your job.
Yeah.
But if there's something that can interfere with each other's jobs that is not in the public interest, we can make that call together.
Right.
And so, like you said, that probably helps in other investigations that you're then involved with, where they're like, okay, we know this guy is not going to just like run his mouth every time he picks something up. And, that's important for you to be able to actually get sources and do your job.
Yeah. And for them, I mean, solving the case is ultimately the end goal.
Yeah.
I mean, me doing a story, if that's going to impact that, it's just not worth it in that moment. But at the same time, like, you're not going to let law enforcement start bossing you around. And that's the line. And a lot of them will call it now, our media partners. And I always thought that was a little weird. Like, we're not your partner. Like, we're, we can help each other. We can help you get the word out about things. But it's a weird, it's definitely, there's not a clear line there.
Yes.
It kind of changes depending on the story and sort of what's happening.
And it's strange because you have to make gut calls a lot.
You do.
I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
And you mentioned like calling your producers and bosses, but like a lot of times you're the one there. Like, you really have to make the call. Like, you're the one who's seeing what's happening and who knows the players. So like, you can't really rely on your boss all the time.
And your boss being removed and wanting the story and stuff, they're going to be a little more, let's say, biased towards you reporting things. That's just the nature of the business. So you have to be able to say, well, am I shooting my load for just this one story and I'm going to fuck myself in the future? Or is this in the best interest for me to hold on to this and document it later?
Yeah.
Like
and sometimes you just don't even tell anybody. or your body. Like that's the thing. Like with a
Yeah.
photographer and producer you're out with, like you guys have usually a tight relationship, especially the good ones, because it's like there are things that you're like, listen, let's just keep this between us for now, because because like you said, other people will get we got it, oh my God, let's get it out, and it's like then you're the one who looks like a jerk.
Did you know there's an online cannabis company that ships federally legal THC right to your door? And that they've found a way to combine THC with carefully selected functional ingredients to target nearly every mood and health concern you can think of? The company I'm talking about is Mood.com and their incredible line of functional gummies. And today, you can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com using promo code Julian at checkout. That link is in my description below. Forget one-size-fits-all supplements that only get you high. Mood's functional gummies are optimized to kick in as little as 15 minutes and take you to the mood you're looking for. Whether that's Mind Magic gummies for deep work and creativity, PMS support to ease cramps and balance mood swings, or their sexual euphoria gummies to help you feel ready for action and turn every touch into a full body experience. Listen, you can find gummies to just get you high pretty much anywhere these days. But Mood's functional gummies combine premium, federally legal THC with targeted botanicals to help you get into the perfect mood, usually in as little as 15 minutes. And everything ships discreetly right to your door. No dispensary lines, no awkward conversations, just better days and nights delivered to your doorstep. Best of all, not only is every Mood product backed by a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but as I mentioned, our listeners are going to get 20% off their first order today by using code Julian at checkout. So head on over to Mood.com, link in my description below, find the functional gummy that matches exactly what you're looking for, and let Mood help you discover your perfect mood. And once again, don't forget to use promo code Julian at checkout to save 20% off your first order. Yeah, no, that's important to have that kind of relationship with the people there on the ground with you, So you had said you've been working, what was his name? Luca?
Luis. Yeah.
So you've been working with Luis for a long time?
Yeah, so Luis is the best. So him and I worked together in local news in Miami before, and did all sorts of crazy things. Like he's basically my partner in crime. We would, we did 1 million hurricanes. We went to Guatemala. There was a volcanic eruption. I mean, you name it, we had been all over the place. And then when I got the job at News Nation, I was like, Luis, like, you got to come with me to News Nation. Like, I can't do this by myself. You're like, you're my guy, And I remember he was like, wait, what is this whole new startup thing? And we were at like a pretty established local station, the kind of place you could just stay forever, make a good living, wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. And finally I kind of convinced him. I'm like, this will be an adventure. Let's just do it, So it's good when you have someone that you can really trust like that. And he'll dial me back too sometimes. Like, are you sure we want to do it? You know what I mean? Like I can trust him in that way.
Yeah, that's obviously incredibly important because, I keep thinking there's not a huge difference. It's very similar to like what you're dealing with versus what like a friend of mine, Joby Warwick, deals with. So Joby's been a national security reporter for like 30 years, Pulitzer winner, the whole bit. And he deals with all this geopolitical stuff around the world. And he talks about it all the time where they will be working on a big story, and the minute they're about to press enter and go, some of their sources on other stories from intelligence agencies and stuff like that will call them up and say, great job on this. You got it. You can't run with it though. And they'll say, why? And they'll say, well, because X, Y, and Z people are going to die if you do this. And then Joby and a group of other reporters who at the end of the day, they're just going off of what sources say, have to go into a conference room and have a meeting to where they have to play their best, throw a dart at the board and see what's right here as to whether or not they're being used by these guys to stop a story that's not in their interests, or whether or not they're actually putting lives at danger. And then if that's the case, what is the public interest of lives, so to speak, if we report this? And I always think about being a fly on the wall in that room. I'm like, how do you even, how do you make that call? And then the next day you read like, 20 people executed. And it's like, like
that's hard.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, that's harder than if you're dealing with like, lives on the line and you have to make those calls. I don't know that I've ever had a situation quite like that, but I've definitely had a lot of situations where the cops have called me and been like, can you hold off for a day or two? Yeah. And usually I'll do it unless I feel like we're being used or we've already held off for a day or two. And it's like, come on, like,
Yeah. When you first got on the scene and thought you know, you were saying your gut reaction was, oh, they're doing this for social media clout. She's going to pop out. When did that change and you suddenly were like, wait a minute, something happened here?
I think it was when his parents weren't coming out of the house. Because like most of the time when you go to a story like that, like, you know, the parents will come out and talk like, where's Gabby? Like, we need help, you know? And it just the way they were acting just didn't make any sense. Like not only not coming out of the house, but like they'd run to their car, like, you know, to avoid it was kind of like, why are you acting like this? Like if there's nothing wrong here. And that's when I started to think like, okay, there's more to this. And I thought I was just going to be there a couple days, you know, like most stories you show up, you know, something usually comes, there's usually some kind of outcome in a couple days, 3-4 days a week. I had no idea that I would be there that long. And then I ended up like retracing her whole journey. I did the road trip, you know, when I ended up just becoming a story that I worked on, you know, pretty much nonstop for, you know, months and months and months.
Yeah. It's one of those that you'll be talking about on documentaries 30, 40 years from now, for sure.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because I've become close to her parents now, and, you know, consider them friends now. It's just a weird sort of, it makes a weird circle in a way, you know. It's like you start out, it's such a story that you're into, and then by the end of it, you're friends with all these people who were involved and you care about them, and it just takes on a whole different, you know, life in a way.
It's kind of strange, but this is the nature of the news business. It's strange when, you know, your job is to go get stories, and then you work so hard, and then you have your moment where you do an amazing job reporting on a story. But unfortunately, in the middle of it, you know, there's insane victims too.
Yeah.
You know, extended families, direct families, a young woman killed in her prime. Like, that's got to be a little weird, right? Where it's like, yeah, this was a huge moment for me, and I did my job and probably helped the case come to a conclusion, by the way, with the reporting you did. But, you know, there's an empty hole left behind for people.
Yeah. And I think for especially like on social media and the sort of the true crime community, they get so obsessed with these cases. Some of them think of it almost it's like a video game or like a movie they're watching. And unless you're really there on the ground, you don't realize that it's like real people.
Yes.
This is not, you know, this is not a game. This is not entertainment. And for me too, like, of course, number one is reporting, but you know, you're human first, and you kind of just have to take a step back. And I was thinking, you know, at the end of Gabby Petito, at the end of Koberger, like I sometimes have this moment, you know, when I can finally feel like I can kind of become friends with the families more than just like me always doing my reporting thing. And it's nice to think, wow, I came out on the other side, and, you know, these people aren't mad at me. And, you know what I mean? Because it's like you go so hard, and there's so many moments where you could really piss these people off because you're bugging them, or and that's the other thing. Like, you don't, you know, there are things you're putting out that they don't always like about the victims, or, you know, because you got to do it. I mean, that's your job, but it's always a good feeling when you come to the other side, and it's like there's the good guys and the bad guys, and it's like the good guys are cool with me even after all this, you know? When
did you first come into contact with her parents? What part, you know, where were we at in the case at the time?
It was pretty early on. They were doing, they started doing press conferences with their lawyer, basically saying like, you know, please, anybody with information. And then they started saying, you know, that Brian Laundrie's parents weren't responding to their calls. And I think it was around that time when I started texting with them. And it just kind of grew from there. But she has a really unique, cool family.
Yes.
I mean, they're cool. Like her dad, Joe, you know, her parents are divorced, but they're all really close.
Yes.
You know, she's got like 2 moms and 2 dads.
It seemed very, I'm glad to hear that. That's legit too.
It is legit.
So genuine.
It is legit. And that's the other interesting thing with covering these stories is you get this like look into these families, and these, even you put the crimes aside, like you get this really intimate look into these people's lives. And like with the Petitos, it's like, holy like cow, like, I mean, you know, my parents are divorced and they don't get along. Like, I'm just like, wow, like this isn't amazing. Like they're an amazing, and it's all real. Like they all go golfing together. They go on vacation together. Like it's really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, when you're watching a family come out and basically like beg the public for help, and you're starting to see the pieces come together, you see that you know, he's left the house at that point, which is crazy that no one – do we even know how he got out?
I mean, it sounds like they thought it was the mom leaving one day and it was actually him, which is like so stupid. Like, how do you mistake him for, how do you think it's, you know?
She's like plus 200 on him.
Yeah. And she's like, I mean, it's like a woman. It doesn't make any sense, you know?
So no, that's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing it had to be like middle of the night, like back door, something like that. Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
I mean, there's so many weird things. Like, you know, remember he ended up in this swamp, which was like a half an hour away. So then my life became, when they thought he was in the swamp, they didn't know he was dead, but it could be, my life would be like camping out at the house and going to the swamp. Like I would just go back and forth every day obsessively.
Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh my God, now I got to be at the swamp all the time. Like, and there was no cell phone service at the swamp. And it was before I had like a Starlink. So... Like that was really difficult though. Imagine going somewhere for half the day and having zero cell phone service in the swamp. So I wasn't able to talk to my bosses. When stuff would happen, I'd be like, I'd have to drive to tweet. Like, you know, I'd drive, get a tweet out, go back to the swamp. And
you're like the Ted movie. Sorry, I was sending a tweet.
Yeah,
it's like crashing.
Yeah, it was so frustrating though. You know what I mean? Because I was like trying to get everything out so fast.
Are you afraid when you go out to that swamp though? I mean, it's you and Luis and who the fuck knows?
I mean, I'm a little afraid. It's funny. I'm not afraid of like killers, but I'm afraid of I'm a little afraid of like gators at night and stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you're right by the water, like that kind of stuff does kind of freak me out a little, you know?
Were you carrying?
No, I wasn't. No.
Brian.
Yeah.
You're from Florida.
Yeah. No comment.
I thought all you people carry.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm working for News Nation. You know, I got to be careful.
Yeah,
we got corporate policies.
They got corporate policies over there.
No comment.
No comment. Okay. Yeah. All right, I like that. Yeah, I mean that's you're talking about though someone who was trained to like live off the land. Brian Entin had grown up loving camping.
Yeah,
you know,
Brian Laundrie. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did I say your name?
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's so weird that he has the same name as me, and then with Brian Koberger too. So it's like all these people.
Yeah, something with the Bryans here, man.
Yeah.
But Brian Laundrie had grown up living off the land, and so he had, if I remember correctly, he had camped out in this swamp, which is a large area too.
Huge, huge
Many
wildlife
times.
preserve. Yeah, and he knew it well, and he hiked there, and so that people thought, you know, perhaps he could be, you know, would know how to survive out there for a while, which is why, I mean, they had crazy resources out there, you know, feds, state, local police, people on horses, ATVs, drones, helicopters. Yeah. I mean, every day it was a massive search. You didn't know if that was going to be the day. And then, you know, you remember, again, just back to the weirdness factor, you know, they searched for weeks and weeks and we're out there every day. And it was so hot that time of year and just muggy, just middle of Florida, you know, and raining every day. And they're searching and these guys are coming out. I mean, every day they're covering every inch. And then like his parents go for a random walk in the swamp and like within like 10 minutes find him. Remember that?
Yeah, almost like they knew where he would have ended up.
Yeah.
And
so
it's also
weird.
But it's also like, so it's another sinister level because they had to know at that point, you know, he probably had offed himself.
Yeah.
And it's like they know, obviously they completely fucked up in this whole situation. It's hard to have empathy for them, but like on a human level, like imagine going in there knowing you're going to find the dead body of your son who also now went out a murderer. It's like you want to talk about just a range of things going on in your head. I can't even fathom that.
Totally. Yeah. And I tried to have that perspective a lot too. I mean, you know, people come, like you said, I mean, in a lot of ways, I look back at some of the stuff they knew and it's hard not to think that they're bad people in some ways. But then I talked to a lot of parents throughout the whole thing who are like, you know, when it's your own kid, you know, people do things for their, you know, when it's your own blood. And I got to talk to other parents say, I'd turn him in immediately. But a lot of people say, well, you know, if it was my own kid, I don't know, you know.
A lot of people say, and I try to be really careful with this, it's a common line we can get caught using with anything serious. You'll say, if I were blank, then I would blank. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer with most things you don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not to say, I would really like to think, and I'm not a parent yet, but I would really like to think that I would not have been as obstructive or just like straight up like offensive to people as his parents were. But from the perspective of like also trying to protect your kid, assuming maybe also you actually have it in your head that despite all the evidence to the contrary, he really didn't do this because my kid would never. It's hard to imagine what your mind might make you do in that situation. And it's just, I mean, it's tragic that the story is just a complete and total tragedy 360 degrees around it because of that.
Yeah, and I don't want to – I hate to skip around too much, but this just made me think of this because I covered the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yep.
And I went back to Utah last week, and this kind of relates. I was talking to the sheriff there about Tyler Robinson, the suspect, his parents. Remember his parents turned him in and everything? And they were telling me how, you know, the parents turned him in, turned their kid in. But now that the death penalty is on the table – they're not as cooperative. And it just got me thinking. It's like you did the right thing and turned your kid in, but once you may be executed by the state, is that where you draw the line of like, I'm not going to assist you in killing my kid? These are all just weird. You know what I mean?
They're weird.
They're weird, you know?
Yeah. Now, I do want to come back to that case and give it the proper, you know, go through and not get too far off it. But I had spoken to a source, and there's been a lot that's happened since that week, obviously, that we'll have to talk about. But I had spoken to a source who had some pretty inside information just on like when he turned himself in and the whole bit. And I can't even imagine what that did. There's one, I can't say this publicly like what it was, but there was one piece of evidence just like when they went to do it. I guess not evidence, but just something that really drove home the moral conundrum and just disbelief the father was in that just, you know, made me almost pull off the road and throw up because you can't even imagine that your kid would do it. And I think from what I was told, the dad, at least at that time, really did believe that his son had actually done this and perpetrated it and was wrestling with that. And it's hard as a human being to not have empathy for that because obviously he didn't pull a trigger or decide to do anything like that. But yeah, we'll come back to that one because I do want to ask you about your reporting a little more specifically and give that the proper light of day. But when one of the big things that happened here was when the video with Gabby Petito was when the video of the police body cam got released, what was a couple days before she was actually murdered, where they had this domestic dispute. They're pulled over on the side of the road. I forget, where was that?
Moab, Utah.
Yeah. And the cops separated them for the night, had them stay in separate hotels and didn't book either of them. But the way it came down afterwards was like they were more investigating her for attacking him. Now, this is just kind of how I look at it. I'm not saying domestic violence doesn't happen from female to male sometimes, but like, let's just be honest, biologically, physically, like, you know, a male can attack a female in a way that a female cannot attack a male. You know, watching that, I know it's hindsight 2020, but when you first see that, are you like me wondering like, what the fuck are the cops doing here? Why are they letting them anywhere near each other again?
Yeah. And that was also like a big turning point in the story because, you know, we didn't know that he was like abusive or that there was even trouble in their relationship. No one was really saying that. There weren't like friends coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, you know, things were really bad. Like we had no idea. And so when that video came out, and also we had only seen videos of them from social media that were like beautiful, like, oh my God, like, oh, I want to be friends with this couple. Like they're amazing. So it was like everything changed in that moment because suddenly there was this other visual now that has come out that it was like, oh my God, this is a whole different story. Like there's something very bad that was going on and we didn't know that. And when we saw the video, it was like immediately apparent. And I remember like people were, other domestic violence victims, women, were immediately like drawn to that video, and they saw so many things that I didn't see. Like that, as a woman who was a victim of domestic violence, like they could immediately see things in that video and things she was saying and doing and trying to cover for him. And I remember just on social media, people were so quick. They were like going through the video, and it all became different after that video.
What kinds of you just mentioned it, but like things that she was saying, or what were some of the specific things that you were like, oh my God, I wouldn't have seen that. But people were pointing out like, oh, it's right there. Just
the way that she was trying to cover for him throughout the whole thing. The way that she started like blaming herself, kind of like victim, blaming a little bit. I mean, if you watch the whole thing, I've gone through it with like experts before who can literally like go frame by frame almost. And it's become like a police training tool now, because they they did a whole report in Moab at their police department and acknowledged that they made all sorts of mistakes, things that they didn't recognize.
Yeah.
And they could have arrested her, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They were more like talking to her and him like, you okay, man?
Yeah, but at one point she appeared to be the perpetrator, but it's like then you almost wish they had arrested her, because that would have changed everything. If they arrested her, her parents would have, probably found out. It all would have come crumbling down. Maybe they would have come out to get, you know what I mean? Like, I wish they would have done something instead of just basically separating them, sending him to a hotel, and which was also weird. You're in the middle. I've been to Moab. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere out there. They were right outside like one of those national parks. You send him to a hotel and like keep her with the van by herself. Like that was kind of weird,
Yeah, the whole thing was strange. I'm not going to lie and pretend I had a ton of personal experience on how they deal with that type of situation where two people are far away from home too. But that did seem like there's got to be a better way to do it than that.
When
like
the cops
take someone to the drunk tank or something. Yeah, you know what I mean?
When the cops felt terrible, by the way, because when I went out there, I interviewed the chief and heard a lot, and they feel terrible. I mean, of course. I mean, it was like terrible. Like some of them couldn't work anymore. I mean, this was like. They felt a lot of guilt.
Sure.
And it's so easy to Monday morning quarterback those situations. And there are so many people that go through Moab because it's touristy and beautiful. And there's a lot of demand. They could have never known that it was going to end up like this. So in a way, I feel bad for the cops too.
Yeah, no, I do have empathy. There's a huge difference between being evil and making mistakes on your job. Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me that they feel guilt for that, but it wasn't like when you watch that whole thing, I forget how long it is, but it's not like 2 minutes. I mean, it lasts a little while. When you watch the whole body cam, it's like they were trying to solve the problem. They just seem to have made poor calls on what the solutions were there to do that. They weren't there to be like, all right, what the fuck do we have here? They were trying to do their job. It's just obviously ended up in the most tragic way, for sure.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you.
So, and also that's what really, if I remember correctly, that's what set off the social media firestorm more than ever, because now you had the image of the crying girl in the car. She still, when it came out, she still wasn't found at the time. And now people were like, oh my God, like this is a domestic situation. They killed her. You've mentioned it a few times, but I think it's important to like actually look at it from your perspective of what it was like being in the middle of it. But when you are dealing with this modern day social media machine of true crime fans, which can be fine, but also go way too far with things, and personal investigators who decide to make it like their life's meaning to like try to solve this for clicks and views. How do you deal with that? Because you're also like you're feeding some of the machine, righteously so, with giving the story, but then you also want to figure out like, okay, how can I play my role to not have like the worst type of people just try to capitalize on this?
It was weird, especially after the video came out, because like a lot of social media people, true crime people, like true crime tourists, some of them call themselves, like came out to the scene then and were also there every day, and would, walk the street and, I don't remember the bullhorns. Like then they'd come out with bullhorns, come out, laundries. We know dirty. They call them the dirty laundries. People started, like having flowers delivered to their house for Gabby, which became like a social media frenzy. So all day long, flowers would show up, flower delivery. I mean, I'm talking constant. Every other minute would be a new flower delivery. And they basically covered the laundry's lawn with flowers. And then they started like the dirty laundry. So they'd put laundry baskets on the lawn. They'd show up because I'd be out there in the middle of the night. They'd show up and they'd throw laundry baskets. So it got to be like kind of crazy and like just too much, you know? And a lot of these people would stay out there all day, and you kind of had to like, because I was on the lawn, you kind of had to like coexist with them. And I've always struggled with this because it's like they usually aren't doing anything bad to me. And I have to stay out there all the time. So I don't want to really become their enemy. Like, because they'll make my life miserable.
Yes.
I mean, they will. They'll turn on me. You know what I mean? They'll be behind me every time I'm doing a news report with a blowhorn or, you know? So I guess it's just, I don't know. I was always like, I don't know how to handle. I'm going to be nice to them sort of because I just want to kind of keep them at arm's length, you know?
Yeah. Those are the ones on the ground though, which I remember, I'm not going to give some of it the time of day and give them attention, but I remember specifically some of those people. But you are also dealing with the people who are nowhere near this thing and are taking pieces of like what you report and a few other people report and like, you know, creating dark web conspiracies on the whole thing, which also, you know, I will remember some of those things would get 2 million likes on TikTok, and it's got to impede the investigation.
Yeah, no, totally. It's frustrating, and they'll use clips of your news stories, and you know, use just a little clip to make it seem like one thing, and it's so wrong. Like what they're and their theories are so wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just know it. You're like, I know the case. But I don't know that they really care. I think it's just like for clicks, and I think there's also like a segment of them that whatever is the truth, they'll do the opposite. Like that's just their thing. Like that's just what they do.
I think you're 1,000% right about that. We live in especially post-COVID, and I understand the genesis of this, but we live more and more in a world of automatic contrarianism. Whatever is said, therefore the opposite must be true.
Yes.
And I've said this till I'm blue in the face. I'm sure people are sick of it, but I always refer to like the universal law of physics. For every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. I want to live in a society where those actions are like this, but we're living in a society where those actions are like this, and it creates more violence to get to, no pun intended, but you know, to get to an equilibrium point. And I think when it's happening on things that aren't political, you know, Gabby Petito's a tragedy. It's not like it's not supposed to be a political story or anything like that. It just shows you how far-ranging that mentality is at every level of our culture now.
Yeah, no, totally. I don't even know if when I was covering Gabby Petito, I thought of it that way, but I think now that I've done more of these cases, I realize I do think that's what people do. Whatever's happening, let's say the opposite, and there'll be an audience for that.
Yep. How did you, once they found her body and you knew now she was deceased and all signs pointed towards the now missing Brian Laundrie as the guy, like, you know, how did you still do your job without injecting opinion? And specifically what I mean by that is, of course, it seemed very obvious that he had done it, but we didn't have him in custody. And there was a while where the cops didn't even officially say, like, he's our guy or whatever. And your job is to report the news and, you know, try to be unbiased about it. How do you toe that line when walks like a duck, quacks like a duck? It's probably a duck.
Yeah, I think by that point, like I was so tired by that point. I was invested. I remember I was doing this one live stream. It was late at night. It was dark. Everyone else was gone. A lot of times it was just me and Luis there because we were on the lawn. And I was doing a live stream on like Twitter. And I remember I was walking down the street in front of the Laundrie's house after they had found her body. And I remember like I was in flip-flops and like gym shorts. And it was like I think it was a Friday or Thursday. And I just remember like it hit me. I had kind of crossed the line a little bit of just being like sad. I mean, of course it's okay to be sad about it, but like I remember thinking to myself, like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't your job. Like you've gone too far. And then I remember looking at myself like in my gym shorts, like, you know, it's okay to wear, but I'm just like, I'm in freaking gym shorts and flip-flops. Like you know, there's nothing wrong with no, but I just mean like, I don't know, that combined with like me feeling like I was getting too emotional. And I remember this moment of just like, I think you're going crazy a little bit. Like, I think you're just tired and you got to go home for the weekend. So I remember that. And by that time when she was found, I felt a little less of a need to like stay there. I mean, he had been found, she had been found. I mean, granted, I was still wondering if the parents were maybe going to get arrested or something. But I remember that was one of the first weekends I went home. It was just kind of like you need to like chill out a little bit, you know? Like you're kind of like losing it. So, and I think I was also sad. I mean, I had gotten to know her family. I just became so invested. And then I went back. I remember I went home for the weekend and I went back. And then it became like people were associating me with the lawn in the house and expecting me to be there every day. Like in case the parents got arrested, like there was like this almost pressure to stay there. And I remember after like another week or two went by, I remember telling Luis like at what point do we leave? Like, do we have to stay here? Like, I feel bad leaving, but I also feel like it was becoming a little like, you know, when do we crossing the line a little like, okay, the parents aren't getting arrested. Like, when do we leave their lawn? You know what I mean? Like,
it's like, when does the story?
And I remember people were like mad about it. They're like, you can't leave. Like, no, you have to stay. Cause it's almost like they wanted justice and me leaving was like, I don't know, like they felt like they weren't going to get justice or something. As weird as that sounds.
You're not the judge.
No. Yeah. Right.
You know?
Right.
I think that was just people's emotional attachment. Like it becomes literally, I used this phrase earlier, but it becomes your meaning of life.
Yeah.
Like when you're involved.
Yeah. People would be like, I have your notifications on. Like every time I would go live from out there, like they were so glued to it.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.